there, it's Lindsay Upton the Quilt Quine. I've been investigating how a quilter might use the Bernina L890 combination overlock cover stitch machine. And I've thought of 3 ways that you can finish off a quilt after it's been quilted before the binding is added, or even not adding binding at all. So I've cut out lots of little quilted samples and we're just going to have a go at a few different settings to see what happens. It's quite speedy, but it doesn't have to be. Just following right down the edge of the quilt. It's going to make sure that the quilting stitches don't come unravelled. So on the top, I will get what looks like a completely normal straight stitch, and underneath will be a chain stitch, which does not add any bulk to the edge. Let's lift the needle and the foot, pull the thread out, cut it off. So underneath, at the very edge, we have this nice chain stitch, and then I'll be able to cut off the excess batting or wadding with my scissors or with a rotary cutter. And now the edges are all just nice and stable. Most of the time when I've got a utility quilt to finish off, I want to trim the edges and stabilise the stitching in one go. So I'm using the Bernina L890 to overlock and trim at the same time. For that I'm using stitch number 14 with a 2-thread overlock wide stitch, and I have followed the guided mode to thread it up. I've got the left needle threaded and a looper. Now I've got my overlocker foot on, and I'm going to have the very edge of it right on the edge of the quilt, and the only thing I have done that is slightly different is that I've reduced the stitch width to 2 from 2.5, so the stitches will be slightly narrower. So let's see how that looks. So the furthest right hand mark on the foot is right on the edge of the quilt, so hopefully that was just going to shave a sliver of the wadding off the edge. Here we go. The only thing it's trimming is the wadding, and it's just stabilising the edge of the quilt, especially if I'm not going to get around to binding it straight away. I'll just chain that off and cut the thread. So what you should be able to see is a very neat edge. It hasn't trimmed off any of the quilt at all, just the wadding or the batting. And here's the back. Here's the back. Just let me focus. That will do very nicely until either I or a customer gets around to adding the binding. And it doesn't use up too much thread, as it's only got 2 cones going. Pretty good. I was actually wondering, is it possible to finish off a quilt edge without any binding at all, using the rolled hem feature on the Bernina L890? So I would recommend that you cut up a load of little quilt sandwiches so that you can experiment with the settings. And let's see how it works. So I've chosen stitch number 8 in the overlock menu, a 3-thread rolled hem. I've made a few little tweaks. I've reduced the upper looper tension just a smidge. I've put the presser foot up to the maximum, that's on the top, and I have increased the little wheel that does stitch width right to the very most it can do, which is 9, because instead of a narrow rolled hem, I wanted quite a wide one. Now, you'll need to make sure that you are actually cutting something off the edge, and I suggest that you quilt steadily to slowly, and that reduces the chance of any weird loops. Just before we start, I'll show you the one that I think looks pretty good. I think that's the side anyway. So I'm using Aurifil cotton. I've got a long arm cotton on the top in the needle, and I've got a number 12 weight in one of the loopers, and then I've just got woolly nylon in the other one. I think it could have been another thread, and you'll see that they are actually all the same colour, because I think you won't see any issues at all then. Let's see how it looks. Off I go. I'm going to try and stay steady the whole way down this sample. It's quite slow, but I have found that you get all sorts of little issues if you do too fast. There does appear to be something caught under my foot, but that's just debris from the last thing I quilted. Steadily, 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 all the way off the edge. And pick up the needle, pick up the foot, pull it away. I think that's really very neat, and it could certainly be used on wall hangings, and it's probably robust enough to use on a quilt if you really want it to. A nice nifty solution, I thought.